One of the things that hurt the most was the silence in the house. So there's no Gracie's Corner playing. There's no little kid music going. There's no babbling baby. It's just quiet.
Yeah.
I'm just coming into an awareness of God and trying to understand him and his character and who he is. And then this happens. So I'm trying to reconcile these two things. And I can't. I don't understand what is going on. I'm extremely angry. I can't look at a pregnant woman. I can't go to the baby aisle at the store. I don't even want to walk past the baby aisle.
Yeah.
I would even tear up and be emotional with just parents walking with their kid, holding their hand, because in my mind, I may never get to experience this. Yeah. I'm having other pains and I'm starting to get worried. So I finally called the OBGYN. She wasn't going to be in the office until like 2 days later. So I sit with this pain and this unsettled feeling for 2 days until I can actually go in and see her. So we go in and she does an ultrasound and she's like, well, you definitely are pregnant. However, the pregnancy, the baby is in your fallopian tube. And it's not gonna be a viable pregnancy. More little clinical lingo terms. Essentially, you need to go to the hospital like right now. Like you can't go home. This is an emergency situation. You have to go to the hospital.
Hey, Destiny.
Hey, girl. What's up?
So Destiny, my guest here today, is first of all just a beautiful human being who has started her own therapy practice and is one of the few people I actually recommend somebody to go to.
Well, I appreciate that.
Listen.
It's a little rough out there, I know.
It's rough out there in these therapy streets.
It is.
But I recommend you because I have seen you go through so many things and come out on top on the other side of them with such a grace and an openness and a willingness to learn and grow and develop. And I love that about you. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So you came to our ministry some years ago. You were probably younger than I am now.
Yes, I'm sure.
Much younger.
Yeah.
And fairly recently married. And I remember you going through kind of an infertility journey. Can you tell us what started that? Were y'all trying as soon as you got married, or what did that process look like?
Okay, so we were married in December of 2013. And so at the time I was on birth control and I was like, well, I'll just stop taking the birth control. Really no plan, but we both desired to have children. We had already talked about it throughout our courtship, if you will. And so we both knew that that's what we wanted. So we get married in December. I think maybe the next March or April, I stopped taking the birth control. So my assumption was I stopped taking the birth control, I'll immediately get pregnant.
Yeah.
And we'll just carry on happily ever after, blah, blah, blah. So after that, there was a period of time where nothing was happening. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Am I okay? Is he okay? But really at this time, I wasn't thinking the worst. It was it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So we go through our first year of marriage. We celebrate our 1-year anniversary. We start the process of buying a home. And then we move into our house, our first house together in February. And at this point, I'm starting to feel away. What is the deal? Because when you're growing up, you're told, if you look at a boy, you're pregnant. If you squint your eye at him, you're pregnant. All of these different, all of this different conditioning that you receive when you're a young girl. And so I'm thinking it's going to be easy. I'm doing it the right way. I'm married now. I can have a baby, So it just wasn't happening. And I'm confused, really.
Mm-hmm.
So moving to our first home in February. And then I'm like, God, what are you doing? Like, I'm confused. I'm really confused.
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember just a little bit of context. This is my first time developing a relationship with God for real.
Mm-hmm.
So I am coming to the church. We're getting acclimated to being married, all of the things. And so I have a very do the work, get the results type of mindset.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking I'm doing the work. Where are my results? So we're going along. We buy the house. We are settling into the home. And then I hadn't quite missed my cycle yet, but I'm like, something's like, what's going on here? So I actually missed my cycle. I don't know if Women Who Win is still going on, but I found out
So.
I found out that I was pregnant like right before your mom took everybody to Women Who Win. We're getting on the van, blah blah blah. We're going to Women Who Win in Georgia. So we're I find out I'm pregnant. I'm excited. Tara's excited. But we don't know. We're young. We're 25, 26 years old. I didn't really know what was going on with my body. I'll just say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm having some pain while we're away on the trip. But I'm thinking, never been pregnant before. I'm just in pain. Whatever.
Yeah,
It's just normal pregnancy thing. I have nothing to compare it to because I've never been pregnant before. So anywho, we get back from the trip. I'm having other pains and I'm starting to get worried. And so I finally called the OBGYN, and it was really odd because I called and she wasn't going to be in the office until like 2 days later. So I sit with this pain and this unsettled feeling for 2 days until I can actually go in and see her. And so we go in and see her. I called Terry, asked him, hey, can you meet me there? Because I'm nervous. I don't know what's getting ready to happen. So we go in and she does an ultrasound and she's like, well, you definitely are pregnant. However, the baby is in your fallopian tube. So, I think I heard her, but I was like, oh, what's she talking? I'm really not grasping what's going on.
Yeah.
And so Terry asked a couple follow-up questions, and in us being naive, Terry was like, well, y'all just can't move the baby, like you can't just he was that, and I laugh at it now, but then I'm thinking in my mind I probably would have asked the same thing, like, can y'all just fix it, And so she's like, no sir, it's not gonna be a viable pregnancy. A more little clinical lingo terms, essentially you need to go to the hospital like right now. Like you can't go home. Like this is an emergency situation. You have to go to the hospital. So I don't really think I'm processing really anything in that moment. I'm like, what? I'm going to the hospital. I've never had major surgery before. So I'm just all over the place. If I'm being honest with you, I can't remember who I called first. I don't know remember the order of everything that had taken place that day. I do know your mom and dad were there at some point. And so I remember feeling just kind of just out of sorts.
Yeah.
You wake up that morning, you're pregnant, you're excited. You go home that night, you're not pregnant, and you're sad. And you don't know what to do with those feelings.
Yeah.
So that started a very long journey of healing for us individually and as a couple. And yeah, that's how it started.
So first of all, not finna cry, okay? Because I remember the day. You said so many things, right? Because I'm like you, right? If there's a formula, give it
Give
to
it
me.
to give me the formula.
Tell me what I got to do.
I'll do it.
I'm going to do A, B, C so I can get X, Y, Z.
Absolutely.
Like in that order, you know? And I do think sometimes like we as Christians get in that
Yes.
routine, like as if God is a genie. Like I got to follow these exact steps and it's going to come out this way. And then your husband is also a pastor's kid, like myself. And so I can imagine it's like I've grown up in this, like, why is this happening to me, to us?
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
Because we have all the faith in the world and, you know, we pray for other people and we believe all these things and yet and still it doesn't work out like you expect. I want to ask you one, it is not an off-topic question, but it is specific to this incident. You said that although, like, yes, they made the decision for you, did you struggle separately with the idea that you had to terminate the pregnancy? It wasn't like your body naturally miscarried, like you had to go.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I didn't struggle with that. I think one of the reasons I didn't is because what was being said to me was medically necessary.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, I could have hemorrhaged and bled to death.
Yeah.
So that's very serious. And so when she said, you know, it's an emergency, you have to go now, I think my brain clicked that the severity of this is beyond what my feelings are at this moment. And I would rather be able to live my life and spend the rest of my time with my husband versus, you know, making a decision to serve myself in that moment.
Yeah.
So I don't really think I put that much thought into that part, but I just knew it had to be serious if she said you need to go now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's it. That's a beautiful thing. But I think that there's so many people who struggle when they have those medically necessary, you know, times where they do have to terminate a pregnancy. It's like, no, you have to, and it's okay.
Yeah. It was okay.
It's okay. Like, it's not that you didn't have enough faith in God. Your faith just had to transition to God helping me through this.
Through it, yeah.
As opposed to God's going to make this one pregnancy, as if this is the only one that he can give me, or as if this is the only baby that he can give me, or the only way that I can have children to raise. And so I just felt like there are people out there who are struggling with that concept of, oh, I have to now bear this guilt or shame.
I definitely see where that would be a point of concern. I think that was more of an afterthought for me.
Yeah.
It was more, but it wasn't really related to that. It was more so, was there something I could have done differently?
Absolutely.
Did I not know my body well enough? Is there something internally going on in my body that I don't understand? So that's where the guilt came in for me. It wasn't necessarily like you rushed into this decision, you know, because they forced you. It was more or less, what was the foundation of this?
Yeah.
Did you somehow cause this, or were there things you could have done to prevent this? So that's where the thought came in for me. But of course it was after the fact, because I go to work that morning. They call, say, I think that my appointment may have been at like 10 o'clock that morning or something like that. And by 11, 12, whatever, I'm at the hospital. So I don't really have time to speed through all of those different scenarios. And then I'm under anesthesia and I'm having a surgery performed and I'm waking up that night and I'm going home. You know, so it happened so fast.
And you went home the same day?
I went home that same night. And it was really traumatizing. I'm not going to lie to you, because I, again, had never had major surgery before. I do not like to be in a space where I feel like I don't have control. That's the anxious part of me. And I just had absolutely no control. And I'm just waking up, and my family's there. Of course, Terry is there. And they're like, all right, you can discharge, tonight and go home. And I'm like, that's it, kind of thing. So it was, and again, I'm 25, 26 years old at the time. So I'm still, to me, fairly young, trying to process all of this. And I'm still a newlywed, and I just bought a house. So I'm high off of all of these different emotions, essentially,
Yeah.
and not really knowing what to do with them.
So now, hindsight, as
Mm-hmm.
a therapist,
Uh-huh.
what would you have said to yourself, or what do you think would have helped you to process through that time?
Giving myself some grace, like truly understanding what that meant
Yeah.
and being able to apply it each and every day. I was extremely hard on myself. Um, it it pushed a lot of insecurities to the forefront that I really didn't know were there.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think if I had truly understood the concept of grace and been able to apply that and just allowed myself to kind of go through those feelings, then I would have been able to process better.
Yeah.
But I held on to things, questioned myself, why me? Why us? What did we do wrong? Kind of thing. So just the grace part, I believe, would have just allowed me to make myself human in that moment
Yeah.
and not think that I had to be robotic and just go through the motions and pretend like I was okay.
Yeah. Did it affect your marriage at all?
Um, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't think it the affected our marriage in a negative way. I believe that this is one of the things that has strengthened our marriage
Yeah.
because, Terry, we have totally different temperaments. I'm way up here. He's like chilled down here. So I think one of the things that happened is we ended up having to find ways to um, meet each other,
Mm-hmm.
which looked different for both of us. And so I believe that it sharpened us in a lot of ways. It challenged us in a lot of ways. He's not big on crying and all the things, but he found ways to comfort me that I needed in the moment.
Yeah.
And I found ways to comfort him when he
What were
needed
some
them.
of those ways, like that y'all were able to meet each other?
I like to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point I was like, okay, Destiny, this may be a little awkward for him. He may not want to talk about it all the
Yeah.
time. But a part of me wanting to talk about it was processing. I
Yeah.
needed to get it out of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to know how he felt about it.
Yeah.
I needed to understand what his thoughts were. I wanted to know if he blamed me. I wanted to know if he was mad at me.
Yeah.
Did you somehow think that this was my fault? And so because he's not a big talker, there was sometimes where the silence was heavy for me because I'm
Yeah.
like, he's not saying anything. Is he mad? Is he, I didn't know what to make of the silence at the time. And so he would oblige, when I wanted to talk about it. But there were a lot of times where I was apologizing because I sort of made it about me and I wasn't acknowledging he lost a child as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I carried the child. Yes, I had the surgery. Yes, my body is healing and I have the scars, but it was his child as well.
Yeah.
And so some of those conversations looked like me apologizing and me truly trying to understand how he felt versus me vomiting out all my feelings.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we went through ours, there's something about going through trauma that like puts you in a childhood state again.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the hospital, as they're telling me, and I'm crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like a little girl,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents are there. this is during 21 days of prayer, and they didn't go.
Yeah.
They came to be with me. And my mom is holding me, and we're both just crying. And I had to, in that moment, stop, because my husband is sitting in the same room, but I'm being comforted by my mom.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, like, inherently. But my mom was like, do you want to get right here? And he said, yeah. But that little girl in me was like, I just want
my mom. Yeah.
But then I had to realize, you're an adult. That's your husband. And you have to learn how to connect with him so that y'all can cope together and go through this together. And so I definitely, it is a lot to process. And I had to remember that he also went through it. But I was like you, like, how you feeling? Like,
right.
Do you think it's my fault?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Are you even sad? Yeah. Because I'm mad that you don't look that sad, that I don't see you crying. You know what I'm saying? And we sitting talking with some of our friends, and he was like, yeah, I cried. I just didn't cry in front of her. And I remember going, you cried? And he was like, yeah, like, I just didn't cry, like, in front of you. And so that was a little healing for me. Like,
absolutely.
Like, he does feel, he does care, even if he doesn't always openly express that with me.
Same scenario. I can remember my mom telling me after the fact that, Terry was kind of sitting in, those little hospital chairs, and he was kind of sitting back away, but she said, I saw the tears coming down his face. And I'm like, Terry, you saw Terry crying? Right. And back then we all called him TJ. I call him Terry because he's a distinguished gentleman now. But, she's like, I saw him. And it was also healing for me because with him being really quiet, really reserved, he really is not going to share his feelings unless you ask him. Yeah. And so to know that he was mourning just like I was, it did something for me, that I realized that we were both committed to the marriage and we were committed to working through this together. Yeah. And so it's a unique situation, but I do believe that it strengthened our marriage in a lot of ways.
I love that. Do you think that you mentally got stuck after that?
Yes. I stayed stuck for, let's see, that happened in 2015. I went through a roller coaster of things for about 4 to 5 years. Anger, frustration, obsessiveness. How can I get pregnant? What am I going to do to get pregnant? Looking up. I mean, if there was an article about it, I was reading it. Yeah. I was reading stuff from overseas. Like, I don't know these people. I don't know nothing about these clinical trials or whatever they're doing. I'm constantly reading stuff. How can I change my diet? Is there something I need to do? Because I think what happened was, because I lost it, I was that much more fixated on getting it back. Absolutely. And so I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out how to get pregnant again. I can remember I read one article one time where they were like, you can't use cleaning products. Like, you have to go clean completely. One of the reasons I stopped getting my hair relaxed is because they said the chemicals in the relaxer could, I don't know.
Well, your locks are beautiful.
Thank you. Some about the chemicals in the relaxer, and I was like, oh my God, I can't put that on my scalp, and I decided to go natural because I really was, part of it was me feeling like I was committing to the process, and then the other part of it was I need to do everything I possibly can to make this happen again.
It's a part of that control.
It's a part of that control. I want to control the narrative. I want to fit it into the little box and do the work, get the results. Yeah. And I did the work, but I still wasn't getting any results. Yeah. So,
like, what was that process like for you and you feeling stuck?
A huge part of the stuck process for me was anger and just kind of allowing the anger to rule.
Mm-hmm.
So just irritable, not knowing how to express the fact that I am angry, that I'm even having to experience this.
Yeah.
And then I think I mentioned earlier that I'm just coming into an awareness of God and trying to understand Him and His character and who He is. And then this happens. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to reconcile these two things. Um, and I can't. I don't understand what is going on. I'm extremely angry. Um, I can't look at a pregnant woman. I can't go to the baby aisle at the store. I don't even want to walk past the baby aisle.
Yeah.
I would even tear up and be emotional with just parents walking with their kid holding their hand, because in my mind, I may never get to experience this.
Yeah.
I may never get to have this moment where um, I can share in the joy of raising a child with my husband. So a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. Um, I can remember even when podcasts started just becoming a thing, I'm looking up podcasts and everything was about parenting, motherhood, this. And I'm like, how do y'all know everybody's a mom? Like, I'm angry,
Yeah.
like, why are there no topics for me? Where's my category? Where is um this ambiguous space that I'm in? Where do I fit in the world? There was also questioning of my identity as far as being a woman. Can I really call myself like, I know I'm a woman biologically, I'm a woman, but I can't do the thing that women are supposed to be able to do.
Absolutely.
So then there's that. There was a period of time where I had like 4 pregnant clients. And I'm like, this has to be a joke. Like, I'm not knowing they're pregnant. Some of them became pregnant while we're seeing one another. And so that was a challenge, because I'm hearing of you wanting to start a family. You actually get pregnant during the process of us meeting and having a partnership together. And I'm feeling odd because I don't know what to do with these feelings that I'm having. And I'm looking across at you in my office, and I'm trying to push down the anger or the frustration, which wouldn't have been directed at them. It was just overall. And then I'm still like, God, why would you send this pregnant client over here? Like, it's a therapist they could have seen. So a lot of anger. And I had a predisposition to be angry anyway.
Yeah.
And I knew that about myself, and I believed that the enemy used that and this loss to keep me in that cycle of anger. Now, hindsight, I can see that, but at the moment, I felt like it was justified. I get to be angry because I lost my child.
That's so good. So the enemy knew that you were already predispositioned to be upset, to be angry. And so he throws something at you to get you to now justify and identify with this predisposition.
Yes. Yep. I just came to that revelation probably about maybe a year ago. But I was already inclined to, because so much had happened. If we just had time.
Yeah.
But so much had happened to me prior to this.
Break it down, girl. Just go ahead.
So, I mean, number one, I grew up with an absent father. So, framework right there laid. Go to college. I had a series of crazy relationships. I've been in abusive relationships before. I had extremely low self-esteem. So, I just wrapped everything up into a ball, and I felt like because of what I've experienced, I can be mad, and nobody's going to tell me that I can't be. So it was resentment, it was bitterness, it was a lot of different things. And so I was already inclined to be aggressive, angry. And so some of that I dealt with before we got married and leading into our first couple of years of marriage as it relates to my dad. But the rest of it, I kind of just held on to. I just tucked it over there, and I was like, yeah, we'll pull you out when we need to.
Yeah.
You know, and I also have the inclination to, you know, I wouldn't have done that unless you had provoked me. And so I always kind of feel like I lay dormant until the right thing comes along.
Yeah.
And then that thing that I was struggling with, which was anger, would rear its head over and over and over again in different ways, in different scenarios. And I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Because I had been angry for so long that it was like a shield. It was like a badge of honor.
Absolutely. Baby, I remember. I
don't got time.
Like high school or college, like, oh, I just want somebody to cross me. Like all these years of anger I got built up, I'm going to take out on that one person. It's just, whoever you are.
Whoever you may be.
I'm going to beat you up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're struggling with anger, but you also don't want to vent that anger, it's like, oh, you just wait. Like till the wrong person crosses you. Like they make you mad enough and everything gonna flip.
Yep.
You know. So I definitely remember being there.
Yeah.
And I remember, I kid you not, I remember the day. Like I had been praying about it for so long, just about being angry in general. And I'm praying and talking to the Lord, and I'm like, Lord, I'm so angry that I can't do anything about this. Like I'm so bitter and angry and frustrated that nothing is gonna help at this point. Like all the therapy, I'm going to therapy. It's not helping. Like this is gonna take a touch from the Lord.
Absolutely.
Divinely.
Yeah.
And I remember I think I went to like a freedom conference, you know, and I want to say we went to the one in Birmingham. So I go to a freedom conference and I just feel so much lighter. And we go to like a bowling alley, and you know, they got those like punching bags in there. And I try to punch that thing for the first time, and it's like, like there's no more anger in me. I literally couldn't even hit it hard.
Yeah.
And that was the moment I knew, like, no, like God really has freed me from this thing that had me so bound for so long. Yeah.
It's part of the anger too, I believe, is protection.
Yeah.
Like a false sense of covering. Because if I'm angry, nobody will bother me. I don't have to talk to anyone. They'll just leave me alone. And then I can sit with whatever my feelings are by myself. I don't have to explain them to you because you may not get it. If I try to explain it to you, you may not have any relatability in that. It was a bunch of different things. But I do believe that predisposition on top of that loss, it kept the cycle going.
Absolutely.
And I believe that it was a scheme. I really do believe now, looking back on it, the enemy really had me he had me good. Yeah. He had me good until I put my foot down.
I love that. So I know you had that loss, and you are now in a place of fostering. But tell us kind of how you transitioned, or how you got to, was that your only loss, or like what happened for you to become okay? Because you said that you struggled like with even seeing pregnant people. And at the time you had a lot of friends who were getting pregnant.
It was all kinds of baby showers at the church. I was like, I'm gonna make this rotel, and I'm just gonna, do what I can do. Drop it off, do whatever. Yeah. One of the things is I did a lot of sitting with myself. I did a lot of, I don't even want to call it prayer, because maybe it's considered prayer, but I just sat trying to understand and wrap my mind around what the feelings that I was having, why I was having those feelings. Another little piece of context, this is my first real grief experience. Yeah. So I had, a couple of great grandparents that had passed, but I wasn't raised with them. I didn't grow up around them. So me losing this pregnancy is my first real
Absolutely.
experience with grief. And so there were a lot of things I did: sitting, praying, exercising. I would read whatever book I could find on the subject. And then there was a church having, I think it was the United Methodist Church. They were doing like a grief group thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used the cover of my grandmother's death to go to the group, but I was really going to the group because of the pregnancy loss.
Oh, wow.
But there was some shame attached to, you know, I don't want to go. You know, they're gonna be like, "Girl, get over it." You know, I really just didn't think people would understand,
Wow.
and so I used that space to kind of work through additional feelings. And in that group, there was a lady that was sitting next to me. And I finally came clean one night in the group because they gave us an opportunity to share. And she slipped me her phone number afterward. And she said, "Give me a call, you know, shoot me a text." And so I did. And she had not had any miscarriages or losses, but she ended up having to have a hysterectomy like in her early 30s. And so we developed a friendship. And one of the things that did for me was, this lady's 25 years my senior. So what that did for me was show me that there was life and there was enjoyment and there was joy outside of motherhood. Like I could still do other things. I could still enjoy my life. I didn't have to carry this pain for the duration of my life, all because I didn't get to achieve this one role. So that was some of what I did. I'm in therapy. I was going to therapy at the time. Therapists need therapists. That's, you know, nothing wrong with that. So I went to therapy. I did everything that I could that was at my disposal to orchestrate my healing process.
I love that.
And then, in 2019, we have another pregnancy loss. So while I'm a little bit more emotionally stable, I'm still confused because I'm working through this guy. We're working through this. We're figuring it out, you know, and then here we are yet again in the same space. And so while I didn't go back to being extremely angry, I just was disappointed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, lost for words.
Yeah.
Literally. And I think around that time, I was a little more emotionally stable, but I closed my mouth altogether. I stopped praying. I wasn't mad at God, but I was trying to figure out what he was doing. I was trying to figure out how this was going to fit into the big picture. So yeah, I was just extremely disappointed.
Let me tell you how much courage that takes, because there's not many Christians who would admit, like, oh, I stopped praying when I got disappointed, when I got let down, when I was confused about what God was doing. And so 2019 comes. You are now pregnant again. You have another miscarriage. You are struggling now again with disappointment. And how do you process through that disappointment?
Let me correct myself. It was 2018. When you
2018.
said 19,
Okay.
I'm like, no, that was too close to the pandemic. It was 2018. So around that time, my job at the time, they offered some fertility treatment. So we had actually started doing like fertility treatment. So at this time, when I find out that I'm pregnant, we're not doing any of that, but I'm like, okay. So what ended up happening is I was in pain one night. I asked Terry he knows I don't really, unless I'm like in dire need, I'm like, we need to go to the ER like right now. He's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm in pain. I don't know what's going on. Take me to the ER. We go to the ER. I let them know what my history is. Because it was pelvic pain. So I'm kind of already like, something's up. So they do an ultrasound. They don't do an ultrasound. They give me a urine screening or whatever. And the guy comes back in and he's like, oh, you're pregnant. And I'm like, no, I'm not pregnant. He's like, no, you're pregnant. And we're going to schedule, you need to schedule with your OB as soon as possible, based on your history. And so I can't really get excited because I know the history. And so I'm like, okay, I'm pregnant again. What are we going to do? You know? So I see the OB. It's kind of either too early to do it was some reason why they didn't do the ultrasound immediately. Finally go get the ultrasound, no baby in my womb, which tells us it's obviously in my tube. So at this point, I'm just kind of like a little bit numb.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not really able to put words into a prayer because I'm trying to figure out how we're here again.
Yeah.
The difference between this time and the first time is I saw the doctor on the Friday, but they scheduled the surgery that following Monday. So I sat all weekend with ruminating thoughts, questions, confusion, pain.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out, again, how does this go into our big picture? Like, I'm not understanding what I was really at a loss for words.
What is the reason?
Yeah, and for people to know me, they know I like to chit chat, have a good time, but I really just had no words. Yeah. And so that Saturday, after everything had calmed down, I bent down like on the floor to get ready to pray, and I couldn't. And I sobbed, like snot, everything. And I think that was my surrendering that I didn't have control, but I still was sort of disappointed in the outcome that I had to go endure another surgery. I had to, trivial but miss work. I had to, I just had to go through the processes again, and I just wasn't really looking forward to that. I don't like being down. I don't want to be on any medicine. So it was a lot of different, the whole thing it really was traumatizing to me because I think it put me in a position where I didn't have a choice. And I always like to have choices. I always like to kind of control my little narrative. Mm-hmm. And I had to surrender that in that moment and just kind of roll with what was happening. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's where I was at that point.
Yeah, because you had two tubal pregnancies. At that point, and they're 5 years apart, and you're still processing the first one.
Yeah, for sure.
At this point, and now it's like compounded grief and compounded disappointment on top of each other.
Yeah,
and when you were talking, I just felt like the statement, God can handle your disappointments. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times as Christians, we feel like our disappointments are questioning God. Mm-hmm. And you're not supposed to question God. Yeah. So I shouldn't be disappointed. I should count it all joy when I suffer it all and go through all these trials, Yeah. But I don't think that God would be upset when it also tells us that he catches every tear. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, if he never wanted me to be sad or never wanted me to be disappointed, what he catching tears for? Right. Are they happy tears?
Right.
Right. And so that was beautiful because I've definitely have struggled with a lot of disappointments, even here recently. Yeah. I was just telling Tyrell, like, I don't think I'm depressed. I think I'm just disappointed.
It feels like depression, though.
It does.
Because I'm thinking to myself, like, now I know what clinical depression is, but is this clinical depression? Like, and it was so odd because I'm disappointed, but I'm starting a practice at this time. It's the pandemic. Like, so all of these different things are going on, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm just stressed. It really took me 3-4 years to realize I was disappointed.
Just disappointed.
I just did not know that it would have been that heavy of a burden to be disappointed. But I realized, and the statement that you made about he can handle it, that's kind of what helped me out of the angry stage. And so I had that in my tool belt when it came to the disappointment, but I had to identify what the disappointment was, because I didn't know what it was until maybe a couple years ago, and I was like, oh.
But you know what I think it is? I think a lot of times we don't, and it's a social media age, we don't sit long enough with our feelings and our emotions to figure out what the disappointment is, to figure out what our actual emotions are. Like, what is it that I'm really feeling? Not what should I be feeling? Not what are people expecting me to feel?
Yeah.
Like what is it that I'm actually disappointed about? What is the root of it? What does it point to? Like, in my childhood, it's a reminder of, and working through all of those things.
Absolutely.
So that we can actually heal.
Yeah. And that's what I had to do. I still like to do that. Sometimes I'm always thinking. Yeah. That's just me. But I am constantly just like dissecting things, because I just have a natural inclination to want to know why. What is the reason? What is the root? What is the cause? Which is, I think, probably why I got into psychology to begin with. But I do that even with myself. Like, I want to know why I'm doing said thing. Like, I'm just not.
Don't make me go back to school, girl.
I need to understand. I'm a very much want to know why person.
Absolutely.
And so, specifically as it relates to myself, I think that's one reason I like to journal. I like to just kind of sit and reflect, because I want to understand my headspace. I want to understand, what's underneath what I'm actually showing. And so that has been what I've been doing since figuring out that I was disappointed. Just searching myself and searching God, like trying to figure out, I think it changed from a why me, to like, how am I supposed to use this? What are you trying to teach me in this? I was joking with Terry the other day, and I was like, God knows me, right? He knows me. He created me. He knows I'm a little impatient. So why in the world would you have me waiting on something? Like, what? How does this fit together? And so we just kind of laughed and joked about that or whatever. But I think there's a reason for that. There's a reason why this waiting was necessary for my growth as a person and as a woman. And I don't have all of the pieces in the whole yet for that, but I have some of them, and I'm trying to use that as it unfolds. I'm trying to use it and give him glory in the process.
I love it. So we kind of hit on it a little bit. You talked about like now getting to that place of fostering. What was your final, like, okay, I think I'm ready to be okay with the concept of loving a child that I did not biologically birth?
I don't think I ever really had an issue with that. Initially, when we talked about it earlier in our marriage, Terry was, I'm not going to say he was against it, but he had his questions. Yeah. As did I. And so one of the things that really cracked the ice on my heart, so to speak, was when my goddaughter was born. And she was born in the end of 2021. And so that kind of started opening my heart back up, and just seeing the different things, like watching her grow. It's like, I can't miss out on this. Like, we've got to figure out something, And so prior to her being born, several years ago, we had a conversation about at what age would we consider starting the adoption process. And so, ironically, the age was like 35, 36 years old once we're settled, a little bit more settled, all of that. And so our goddaughter was born in 2021, and then in the beginning of 2022, we decided to do our foster parent application and all of that. And so you can just straight up foster, but there is like you can be a foster and an adoptive home. Okay. And so we wanted to do that because the goal was to have a child in our home permanently. And so that is the journey that we are on currently. which is interesting in a lot of ways.
Has it always been like smooth sailing? Was it like one kid and you're done, or?
No, it's pretty chaotic. I'm not gonna lie. So we've had a lot of or a handful of one night placements. So
Wow.
you know, babies are just needing like a little shelter for the night until CPS can do whatever it is that they need to do and secure placement elsewhere. We've had one long term placement that was about 8 months, and our current placement, we've had him since December of last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right at about 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the circumstances for every child obviously is different, but there is a lot of, just kind of moving parts, back and forths. There's still a lot of waiting, which was interesting to me because part of the reason that I desired to go this route was it was like, oh, I'll have to stop. The waiting will be over.
Yeah.
Well, it's really not over. We're still waiting for court dates, waiting for paperwork, waiting for this, waiting for that. So I'm still having to exercise that muscle of waiting, of patience and waiting in this process as well, which is teaching me a lot. Mm-hmm. It is.
So you said, like, y'all got to wait on court dates and paperwork. And, like, although they give you this child with the intention of adopting, like, was that always their goal as well? Or is it?
It depends on the case.
Okay.
So, I won't get into, like, the minute details, but it kind of just depends on what the process is for that child. But a lot of times when a child is placed with you, and it depends on if the plan is reunification or if the plan is something else. Mm-hmm. So the something else could be kinship placement. They could be going to live with a relative, or they could be going to be reunified with their biological parents. You just really don't know. And the caseworker that you're working with, they kind of, they give you as much information as they can. But a lot of it is question mark because it's up to the judge on what the plan is based on the evidence that's given to the judge or the information that's given to the judge. So the court, like CPS gives their recommendation, and then that's kind of just how it flows from there.
But the judge ultimately gets to decide.
Yeah, in the timelines are pretty standard. So like the first baby that we had to wait 6 months before we kind of know what's gonna be what. So there's a lot of just waiting really until you go to court and you get clarification on what the next steps are, kind of.
So with the baby that you had for that 8-month period, mm-hmm. I'm sure that the plan was adoption. That's what you guys
That's
wanted.
What we desired, yeah, but that's not what happened.
So that was a judge decision.
Well, yes, all the moving parts together, but what in that scenario, there was a person that did what they were supposed to do, followed the plan to be reunified with the child, mm-hmm. and that's what they did. And so there was no, just because the Weems want the baby doesn't mean they get the baby, because this person has done what they're supposed to do legally within the laws, within the statutes, to have this child be reunified with them. And so that's what happened in that scenario.
So you all wanted to keep the baby?
Yeah. That's still my honorary baby to this day.
So y'all still have contact?
We do not have contact with her. There was some contact afterward, minimally, but no contact with her. Yeah. But I still think about her.
So how do you process that? So you've had 2 tubal pregnancies. You've gone through this process of all these like one night placements. Mm-hmm. You foster a little bit here and there. Yeah. And then you get this baby that you have for 8 months that you think you're going to be able to adopt. Mm-hmm. And then you have to give the baby back.
Mm-hmm. A mess, a wreck. We were devastated. I did not realize how devastated I was until I sat with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here we go with this disappointment again, kind of thing. And so while I understood that there were certain things that were in place, that were done, there's laws, there's this, there's that, there was still a part of me that didn't understand why we would have to experience yet another loss. Yeah. Because despite what they tell you, don't get attached to the child, don't do this, you are doing life with this child.
Correct.
You are putting them in daycare. You're taking them to the doctor. You're going on family trips. You're doing whatever you would normally do with this child. For you to say to me, you do not get attached, I have no comprehension of that. Because what does that even mean?
Like how?
There's no way that you can tell me that people that are out here fostering with a pure heart, that are really doing this because they feel called to do this, they don't get attached. That's not even, it kind of irks me to even say it out loud, because I don't even understand how you can do that.
And not get attached.
If you have pure motives. Now, if you're doing the most, then that's different. But, you're integrating this child into your family. You're introducing them to family. You're just doing all the things. You're creating memories and pictures and all of that. And then so when it ends, one of the things that hurt the most was the silence in the house. So there's no Gracie's Corner playing. There's no little kid music going. There's no babbling baby. It's just quiet.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, for me specifically, I won't speak for Terry, the silence really messed with me, because I'm like, my house is quiet again.
Yeah.
And when will it have noise again? Yeah. So
because I think we had a separate conversation. You kind of wanted to be like, I'm done. Like, I'm done being disappointed.
We talked about it, and I said, Terry, I think I need a break. Yeah. I need a break for now, because I'm trying to sort through what I'm feeling, and I would hate for another child to come into our home and me be closed off, or me just be kind of grieving during that process, which I know is a part of it, but I wanted to be able to give my full attention to any future children that were going to be in the home.
Yeah.
And so we were on a break until we got a call, which hence the 9-month-old baby we have with us now.
Yeah. They called him. It's like, it's an emergency.
So yeah, they called, and we were on what they call deferment, which is taking a break. And here's how my little brain worked. I'm thinking they're calling about the previous baby. I'm like, oh my gosh, something's happened. They're calling. They want us to come get her. Because I'm thinking, why are they calling me outside if I'm on deferment? So they called. They let us know the details surrounding the situation. I called Terry. I said, hey, they're calling for blah, 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 blah. And he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, we can at least try. We can at least try again.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right. And 3 days later, we bring this baby home, and he's been with us this entire time.
I love that.
Yeah.
Ugh, I love that.
So yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's been a roller coaster, but one thing that has been so refreshing to my soul is all of the things that I did not think I was going to experience, I've experienced with him.
Yeah.
We brought him home from the hospital. I did the newborn waking up in the middle of the night, being in the daze, tripping over stuff, trying to get to the baby, trying to figure out what's going on. The doctor's appointments, the being nervous about daycare, are they doing what they supposed to be doing at that daycare? All of these little first time, feelings and thoughts and anxiousness that you get when you become a parent. I didn't think that I would get to experience those in their fullest sense. And so to be in this process where we are and we have, it's kind of surreal a little bit, because it's like, oh, we're doing this, There are times where I would just start crying in the middle of nowhere. And Terry was like, hey, you all right over there?
It's healing.
It's so therapeutic. I just, it's hard to even put into words, but the very thing that I never thought I would experience, I'm currently experiencing. And so with our first placement, she was older.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the little first time stuff we didn't, see. And then she left kind of in the middle of some of the other milestones getting ready to start happening.
Mm-hmm.
So with him, we've had him since he was 5 weeks old. So we've seen everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that is beautiful to me.
Yeah.
It's been a beautiful process. Chaotic at times, but it's been a beautiful process.
I love that. I love it for you. My heart is just so full, especially after everything you've been through. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to pray for people who are struggling with disappointment, specifically for what you kind of said right at the end. You said, we can at least try again. Mm-hmm. I love that. Just the ability to put yourself back out there, So if you pray with me.
Okay.
Father, I thank you so much for Destiny. I thank you, Father, for her story, for her life, for her testimony, that you have helped her to really sit and to process. I thank you, Father, that there's no disappointment that she has had, that you were too big to carry. I thank you that you've comforted her and that you are taking her through this healing process. I pray just a closer bond between her and her husband and their son. I thank you, Father, that you will continue to help him to be healthy and to grow and just a loving environment. Now, Father, I pray for everybody that's watching this who has been struggling with just compounding disappointments, one on top of the other, and it's almost like they can't catch their breath. Father, I pray just a sense of peace to come over them. I pray that you would help them to grieve properly, to see you in the midst of the situation. I pray that you would help even me, Father, help us to know that it's okay to put yourself back out there. It's okay to try again, that you hold us in the palm of our hands and that we can fully trust in you. And I'm just so grateful for it now. And it's in the mighty name of Jesus Christ that we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.